Completing this chapter, the learner will be able to state what is meant by a distress notification, identify the different methods of sending a distress signal, state the aim of GMDSS, identify different types of GMDSS equipment used in a distress and state their function, identify the contents of Annex 4 of the International Regulations for Preventing Collisions at Sea, identify who has to respond to a distress signal. The duty officer and lookout are on the bridge. The lookout sees a red flare and reports it to the duty officer. The duty officer and the lookout watch the red flare, and the duty officer asks the lookout what he thinks would happen next. Welcome to this module on search and rescue. Depending on your previous experience, this module will either refresh your knowledge of or guide you through the process of a search and rescue operation. Chapter 1 covers different types of distress signals and their meaning. If you are already familiar with distress signals, you may be able to proceed quickly through this chapter. Please remember that there will be questions, both at the end of the chapter and at the end of the module. First, let us look at what a distress signal indicates and identify the different types available. What does a distress signal mean? A distress signal is a special type of communication. It shows that people, a ship, or an aircraft are in serious danger and require immediate assistance. A distress signal is made up of two parts. Something audible or visual to attract your attention, for example, the red flare to make you take notice. An indication of the approximate position of the distress. For example, the red flare is northeast of your position. There are two groups of distress signaling equipment: Global Maritime and Distress and Safety System equipment and Annex 4 International Regulations for Preventing Collisions at Sea equipment. The International Regulations for Preventing Collisions at Sea, IRPC, are often referred to as COLREGs. We will look at both groups in detail. The aim of GMDSS is that when a craft sends a distress signal, shipping in the nearby area and search and rescue authorities ashore are informed of the distress. A coordinated search and rescue operation can then be started as soon as possible. The quantity and coverage of GMDSS equipment will depend on the sea areas the ship operates in. Make sure you know where each sea area is by clicking on each one in turn. The following distress equipment is required by GMDSS regulations for all passenger ships and all cargo ships over 300 gross tonnage on international voyages. Click on each piece of equipment to find out more about it. In addition to using GMDSS equipment, a second group of distress signals are listed in Annex 4 of the International Regulations for Preventing Collisions at Sea. Spend some time looking through the list to refresh your memory about possible ways of signaling distress. The master has been called to the bridge and asks the question, "What time did you see the distress signal? Have we heard any other messages, or has anyone responded?" Both the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, and Safety of Life at Sea, SOLAS, state that the master of a ship at sea, on receiving information from any source that persons are in distress at sea, shall provide assistance and proceed with all possible speed. This obligation to provide assistance applies regardless of the nationality or status of such persons, or the circumstances in which they are found. In other words, you cannot choose who to rescue and who not to. Under UNCLOS, the obligation to provide assistance depends upon it not causing serious danger to the ship, the crew, or the passengers. Under SOLAS, if the ship receiving the distress alert is unable, or in special cases considers it unreasonable or unnecessary to proceed to their assistance, the master must make an entry in the logbook. The reason for failing to proceed to the assistance of the persons in distress must be given, and the appropriate search and rescue service must be informed. There are certain situations where masters are released from the obligation to respond. Where one or more ships have been requested to respond and their ship has not, this decision shall be communicated to all parties involved and recorded in the logbook. When informed by the persons in distress, the search and rescue service, or the master of another ship who has reached those in distress that assistance is no longer necessary. This must also be recorded in the logbook. Apart from the self-assessment, this chapter is now complete. Before moving on to the next chapter, here is a summary of the key points from this one. A distress signal means that people are in serious danger and require immediate assistance. It is made up of an audible or visual signal to attract attention and an indication of the approximate position of the distress. There are two groups of distress equipment: GMDSS equipment and equipment which can be used to give the distress signals listed in Annex 4 of Colregs. There is a general obligation to provide assistance to those in distress at sea, unless the master considers it unsafe, unreasonable, or unnecessary to respond. An entry must be made in the logbook giving the reason for failing to proceed to the assistance of those in distress, and the appropriate search and rescue service must be informed.